Hello guys, welcome back to the next tutorial. So in this one we're going to continue talking about our methods, and we're going to take a look at few other things that's really important about methods, and it's going to just complement the methods. So let's open the PyCharm and let's see what those things are. So this is the code from our last lecture where we define the simplest methods in the world maybe, where we're summing up two numbers and we're just printing them out, right? So let's talk about few important things about methods. So first of all, the naming convention. The naming convention is exactly like we have for the variables, and we have to just follow those things. So the letters, numbers, underscores, those are the accepted things as similar to variables. And it's good to separate words with underscores, or if you want to follow the camel case, you can just do something like this, like where the first word is all small, and then second word starts from a capital letter, and then it follows. So basically it's just a preference based thing, but usually in Python things are all small, separated by underscores and those things. So that's pretty common naming convention. I'm going to talk about one more thing. So whenever we write a method, we should write a docstring. And what a docstring is, it's similar to the thing that I always write in the beginning of the class or the file. So this is again started with three uh, quotes, and then if I hit enter, it's gonna create this thing inside a method. It's gonna create a kind of a template. So here I should write what the method does. So basically I can just say get sum of two numbers. So this is the description of the method, what method is doing, and it accepts two parameters. Param1 is, so it is the template by default it gives. You can change it, you can just modify it the way you want it the way you understand. It's easy. So it accepts two parameters, n1 n2. It automatically took it from there. It's the beauty of PyCharm. And if it returns something, and that's what we're going to talk in this lecture, what is this return means. So that's the template, and this is helpful when somebody else uses your code and they're trying to understand what your code is doing, what this method is doing basically, so they can get the feeling that okay, this is the description of the method. It takes two parameters. What does those parameters mean, and what does this method return? So this is really important, and it helps in the long run to maintain the code and understand the code. So I would highly recommend putting those things up there. So let's go ahead and understand this return thing. Till now we just took a look at the simplest method. We just printed out something. Let's say I wanted to save the value that it's returning, right? Basically the value it's right now just printing, but let's say I wanted to save this value and I want to use this value again somewhere in my code, right? So what should I do in that case? So there's a keyword called return, and it allows us to return exactly what it means. It allows us to return a result from the method, and then we can store that result in a variable, and we can then further use it wherever we want. So instead of just printing out this stuff, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get rid of this, and I'm just gonna say return, and this is the keyword, and now I can say n1 plus n2. So what it's gonna do is it's now gonna return the addition of this thing. And if I right now run the code, so let me just get rid of this part because it's not needed in this tutorial. So if I now call this method, and I'm already passing two arguments, two parameters up there, right? And if I run this code, what's gonna happen? Nothing, right? Actually everything happened, but it didn't print out anything because we took out the print statement. So what's happening right now? It's returning the addition of these two things, and it's just doing that. And since we're not capturing it into any method, right? So what we can do is we can define a variable called maybe sum1 and put it equals to, and assign it the value of the return of this method. So basically whatever this method is going to return, the result it's going to throw, we are saving it in the sum variable. And here we can do the same thing. We can say sum2 different variable and capture this value, right? And after that, if you really want to print those things, I can just do that in the print statement, and I can put sum and 1. So I have the value of the sumNums method in my sum1 variable, and I'm then printing it out. So let's run the code now. When we run it, it prints 10 because sum1 had 10, right? 2 plus 8 is 10. So that's how we use the return statement, and it's really helpful. We can perform any operation or action in that. That's really handy. And one more thing, guys, so it's really important to pass the exact same number of arguments for the method, whatever it's expecting, right? And it accepts only 2. So I'm using expect and accept interchangeably, but they just mean the same thing. So if I not in English, but right now in here. So if I try to pass 10 up here, it's gonna give me error. If you can see this thing here, it says unexpected argument, because this does not believe that it should get 3 arguments right now, and I'm trying to pass 3. So right now that's gonna give me the error. So that's really important to pass the exact number of argument what method is expecting, right? So that's really important. So what next? You know what? Let's take one more example to understand this return thing so you can get a better feeling about it. So let's create one more method called, maybe I'm just gonna say def, this is the definition, right, is metro. So what I'm trying to do is I'm just gonna expect a city name. So this is gonna accept one argument. So maybe just say city name, and then it's gonna say colon. So let's create a list of some metro cities, right? So I'm just gonna say a list, and I'm just gonna create a small list. Don't want to create a lot of long list. So maybe say SFO and NYC. There's a lot we can do, but let's just keep 3. So and LA. So we have put 3 names of the city in a list, and what we are trying to say is these are the only metros that we know of. And in United States there are a lot more, but let's just keep these 3 in the list. And we're just trying to find that if someone calls this method from outside and provide a city name, then we should return that person if that city, whatever the caller is giving us, if that city is a metro or if it's not a metro. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna use a couple of things that we already learned in this tutorial, in this class. So not this lecture, this whole tutorial. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna check for if city, the argument that's here, right? If city in L, so L is the list, right? That the metro names basically, and then put a colon. So what does this mean? This means that it's gonna check if the city that's passed in here, it exists in the list. In is the keyword that's gonna check for it. If it exists here, then we can return true, which means yes, it's a metro, right? Else, so you can check, see those things, right? If, then the colon, and then the indentation, and else, and then colon, indentation, return false. So we can return anything depending on the need of the R, right? So right now what I'm doing is I'm just checking for the city. If it exists in the list, then I'm returning true, that yes, it's a metro. If it's not in the list, then I'm just gonna say yeah, no, it's not a metro. So let's try to call this method, and since it returns something, what's gonna happen is I'm just gonna capture this thing in a variable. So I can just say x, and I'm just gonna call the method is metro here, and I'm gonna pass a name of city. Maybe let's check for SFO right now. So since it is a string type, what I'm gonna say is put in a string SFO and capture the result. Now let's print the result because we want to find out the output, right? So I'm just printing out X up here. So, and you know what, let's print one more statement so we know that where our new method is starting from. So just do this, should be good enough. So let's run the code now and see it. So right now it says true because yes, SFO lies, it lies in the list, right? It exists in the list. So let's try to see, let's say Boston, which is of course a big city, but still because it's not in the list we can say that. So we expect false and it's there, false is there, right? So that's how we can use these if statements in a method, and we can build methods. We can use the return keywords and all those sort of things, right? This is really important. So that's about the return statements. You know what, I want to talk about one more thing about this thing, passing arguments to a method, because Python is a dynamic binding, there is no strongly typed data types, right? We already learned about those things. So if you're coming from other programming languages, you might be aware that when we define methods and put arguments, we put the parameter type. So we put, like, if this is an integer, we put int or something like that. If a string, we put string in Java, like that. So, but this does not know about it because Python is not strongly typed. So there are chances of errors. A person can, so this is flexible also. You know what, if I just say, so let's say string add, I can just create a variable called string add, and I can just say some nums, and I can pass in two strings. I can just utilize the Python dynamic binding and make it more flexible. I can just say 1, and I can put the second parameter as 2. Since I'm trying to do the strings, I have to pass in the quotes, and I can just do something like this, and then after that I can print the string add, right? So this is the variable string add. I can do this. So let's run the code this time and let's see what happens. So it says right here it concatenated because it's just a plus sign. You can see that, right? And we can add strings with the plus sign. So it just concatenated that thing, and we can see 1 and concatenated to 2. So this is pretty flexible and we can make use of it. But the thing is, there are chances of errors that if I try to pass something like this, 1, and then if I pass a second variable, second argument as just a number and the first is the string, I might see issues, right? I might see issues. So it says that it cannot add, right? It cannot convert int object to string implicitly. So there could be issues. So we have to be careful about it. We should know what we are doing. And here these things, parameters, these talk strings come into picture. They help us, and we can actually make our method smarter. So it knows what kind of uh, variables are expected, and we can check if the user is passing the same, if it's passing the correct ones, and we can code according to that. So those things to keep in mind. That's pretty much it. Just try to use this return statement, download this code, refer to it, and let me know if you have any questions, guys. So stay tuned for the next lectures. Thanks for attending this.